Happy early birthday to me, Guardians. Today is September 23rd, 2022. My name's Danfinity, and welcome to Destiny Digest. Not Destiny related, but September 24th is my 36th birthday. Before you say, "Oh, Dan, we didn't get you any cake or anything," that's completely fine. Leave a rating and a review on the podcast platform of your choice. It's free, and it helps the show in the algorithm. But enough about me. This week, we have GameAward's Class of 2021 member and lore buff, Psalmlab, to talk the story so far in the season of the Plunder. Fun conversation in there about the major players coming to the forefront in the story in the next few minutes. But first, Hotfix 6.2.0.6 went live yesterday, bringing with it fixes to the map waiting for disjunction and Cathedral of Dusk Crucible matches as promised in last week's TWAB. For the King's Fall raid, which saw its master version debut in Destiny 2 this week, they fixed an issue where the Daughters of Oryx were taking extra damage from rocket launchers, also fixing an issue where some players would spawn behind the doors during the War Priest encounter. For the full list of notes, be sure to check out the links in the description for the episode. In IRL legal news, Bungie had a counterclaim filed against them from cheat maker AimJunkies last week. Bungie has been fairly aggressive in litigation with companies that have posed to threaten the delicate ecosystem of the game over the last couple of years, with AimJunkies seemingly the first to swing back. AimJunkies alleges Bungie hacked computers owned by a developer, as well as reverse engineered their hacks, which is against the company's terms of service. It's a bold move, Cotton. The irony of a cheat maker crying TOS is not lost on me. Now for the TWAB TLDR. We have a light TWAB this week. Hippie writes, "A lighter TWAB is a good thing sometimes. It means heads are down and creativity is high." That explains all the Bungie I saw on my Twitter timeline earlier this week. There's also a reminder that the Team Rubicon Preparedness Month campaign is going on until the end of September. Anyone who donates $50 or more before midnight on September 30th will acquire the Seeds of Hope emblem. The Season of the Plunder original soundtrack is available in the Bungie store for free as long as you've completed the mission Salvage and Salvation. This can be collected through December 6th, 2022 at 9 a.m. Pacific. Lastly, Festival of Lost is just around the corner. It's about to get spooky in here, folks. And now on to this week's conversation with Psalmlab. Today we have one of the members of the GameAward's Class of 2021, Psalmlab, with us today to talk about the lore of Season 18 so far. And just like, and to answer some questions that we fielded from Twitter, I believe we have like 3 to kind of get into here. But Psalmlab, thank you so much for being on the show. Maybe tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself and where they can find you on the internet in case they jump ship like toward the end of the episode.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you so much, Dan, for allowing me to come on the show. Really excited to be here.
Absolutely.
Always obsessed to, first of all, catch up with you, and then second of all, get to talk about Destiny, especially the lore. As you mentioned before, my name is Psalmlab, also known, my first name is Smart. That's my real name, Smart Hopewell. If you want to Google me, feel free to. So yeah, I'm a Destiny content creator, so making videos once a week because they require a lot of research, and I like to be thorough. So I take my time because there's nothing worse than putting out content and then it's wrong. I've had that happen before. Could either be something as simple as like typos. Because I'm neurodivergent, that's a big aspect of who I am, so that ties into my work. So sometimes I miss things, right? But I have a gracious community who will either point it out to me or who won't point it out to me, and I'll discover like almost a week later that my video has a typo in the title, and I'm like, no wonder it's not trending well.
For the
but
memes.
the good thing, right? The memes. Good thing about that is, it's always a learning curve, isn't it? There's always room to improve. So it was exciting fixing that and then seeing the video stats go up a little bit. So I appreciated that. Yeah, a lot of the themes in Destiny can be quite heavy, pretty weighted, I think, story-wise, and so I mean, Destiny can be quite an emotional place.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I like to do is I focus on the light.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the other Destiny lore content creators tend to focus on like the seasonal narrative and predominantly what's happening with the darkness. I
Mm-hmm.
tend to focus on sometimes I focus on the seasonal narrative, but I'm usually looking further ahead because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes all the real estate is occupied. there's, there's nowhere to build a new house. And so
I like that analogy a lot, especially when it comes to conversations surrounding YouTube lately.
yeah, exactly. Especially when it comes to monetization and algorithms and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like to focus on connecting narrative threads from old lore to new lore and teasing at ideas and asking questions more than giving opinion or speculating too much because
Mm-hmm.
when you speculate, it leads to conversation, and sometimes those conversations lead to debates and arguments. And the last thing you want content that makes people think, but not necessarily like inciting negativity. And my channel is
Yeah.
all about positivity and encouraging people and encouraging them that they can do the impossible. And so I like to tie that theme into the Destiny narrative.
Okay. Cool. So like that's an interesting perspective to come at it because like a lot of creators that I watch in the space do focus primarily on like darkness, the abilities of the darkness. Maybe it's because we know so little about how or in like until recent years we've known so little about how they it operates. And we're starting to get more fleshed out, like what the modus operandi of the witness is, and other things along those lines. So, what I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to ask a question from that Twitter thread,
Yeah.
from Average D2 Player. What is your favorite piece of lore in the world of Destiny? Can be from either Destiny 1 or Destiny 2, or do you even have a favorite piece of lore from either?
That's a really good question. Favorite piece of Destiny lore? I think it would have to be. I believe it's called the Book of Dreaming. Don't
Okay.
quote me on that. Let me check. This video, this podcast is sponsored by Ishtar Collect. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, it's the Book of. I want to say Constellations. Yes, Book of Constellations. That's one of my favorite lore books because it talks about the very early part of like the city age,
Mm-hmm.
the last city on Earth, and the speaker, and like his perspective and what he went through, and what it was like when the city first began, what it was like having to lead people, even though he was like lying maybe 90% of the time in order to get people to be on the right page for their safety.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a very like uneasy is the head that wears the crown kind of edge
Yeah.
with who the speaker is, and it's really cool because uh we get this brief in-depth look at who he is and his character, who some of his like predecessors were, what was happening right up until that point, which I believe was literally not too far away from Red War, because
Mm-hmm.
he has a dream about basically what happens during the Red War, and that's kind of the last major time. This book is the last major time that we hear from the speaker directly. Like after that, I
Mm-hmm.
think we get sprinkles of him like throughout the lore, but then after the Red War, that's it. It's just he's he's long
Yeah.
gone. He's dead.
Yeah. We
Um,
we witnessed the smack.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, which is sad because he was a great character, and for
Mm-hmm.
any D1 veteran, like everybody who's experienced him through that will obviously may have some attachment to the speaker or may not. Yeah. I really like that book because I think it sets up a lot of the tone and also some of the things that we as Guardians encounter as we go through the story of Destiny later on. So it's great.
Heck yeah. I was going through mine, and I kept coming back. So there's a book called Ghost Stories. I want to say that it came out during one of the Festival of the Losts, but it tells the story of a guardian who has been resurrected and travels out into the reef and deposits his ghost there because he didn't want to come back, was basically the thing. And then the next time that he's found, he's on the tangled shore in kind of this messed up armor, toting around like a bag of ghost shells that he has killed.
Right.
And is kind of like just bringing them around the tangled shore as kind of like a warning. I think it's something along the lines of like he has a question for the Awoken. That's just something that's kind of like in the back of his head the entire time.
Yeah.
That's probably like the most metal piece of lore that we have in all of Destiny, and it just seems I want to find out more about that character and maybe if we see him come back, because it's an interesting premise in the world of Destiny.
Yeah, I would agree. Like I remember reading that, and it's such a visual bit of writing too. It really, like, even from the first sentence, it pulls you in and you're like, oh, okay, this guy is intentionally, he's not a like a Shin Malfa kind of character. He's like, he doesn't want any of it. It's just like,
right.
Why
I just
bring back at all?
I didn't ask to come back.
Right.
I didn't want any of this. But I'm not gonna. He basically. He still leaves himself open to be resurrected, which is kind of like an interesting little twist in that story. But coming into this season, like, how do you feel so far about season 18 as a whole?
So season 18, this model of seasonal narrative, or the combination of Destiny gameplay and seasonal narrative, is always my favorite, because this is where Bungie does what they do best, especially on the narrative team, and that is set the big scope for things that are like way ahead, right? Way ahead. I think, and it's funny because as the Destiny community has grown to appreciate lore more, right? I think one of the seasons that set that up was Season of the Worthy, which is where we had that massive content drought due to COVID. Obviously, that was right in the middle of COVID.
Right, yeah.
And things were like super delayed, super pushed back. We were looking at 2022 for stuff desperately, like, why? But one of those seasons, Season of Plunder, which is the season that we're in right now, is potentially big because it's setting up really big things for Nightfall and beyond. It starts off as this whole very innocent pirate kind of season, and we're like, oh, okay, we're gonna be pirates.
It's gonna be pretty light,
right, and then boom, they hit us with first we get the Delicate 2 exotic rifle, which comes with a huge amount of lore, and then, I mean, I'll preface this because obviously we don't want to give away any major spoilers. So if you haven't played the last like 3 weeks, 2 including this week, right? Seasonal story, go ahead and obviously play that. But if you're happy to be spoiled, stick around.
I would say maybe the next like 30 seconds, just skip forward.
Yeah, so skip ahead now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now we have these relics of darkness and the really I was gonna say well, how do we describe this?
Well, they're reliquaries, right?
Well, yeah,
Like-
the with fragments, well, not fragments, literal pieces of Nezarec. Nezarec, who was a disciple of the Witness, and
which is that the first time that's confirmed in the lore?
so every other piece of lore that we've had has suggested that he is a disciple, but it's never come out right and confirmed it. But this week's little cinematic short kind of confirmed that, and also that he's in the pyramid on Luna, which is the moon. And so the big deal about this character is we've heard so much about him for such a long time in, little sprinkles of lore here and there. But the lore paints him out to be like, I think one of the entries like describes him as like the end. I'm paraphrasing, right? It doesn't quite say that, but it describes him as like the end, or almost like he is at the end of everything, and he's kind of waiting to rise again. That's like I'm putting words in Bungie's mouth because they've laid it out a little bit better than that, but more or less, right? If you string it together and you read all the different lore entries from we've got the Delicate Tomb Exotic Rifle. We have the glaive, which I forget what the glaive is called.
Oh yeah, that's a Nezarac's. I have it. Let me pull it up here. It is called Nezarac's Whisper.
That's the one. Nezarac's Whisper. And then I believe we had a helmet called Nezarac's Sin.
We also now have an ornament for his robes as well.
That's right. Did that come with lore from? I know it's in Eververse as a.
I purchased it. It is.
So did I.
Sick looking. It is pretty gnarly. Like the way that it coats. It coats your armor over with the kind of like the energy pulses of the Witness.
Yep.
Like just those striated lines. It's super cool.
Yeah,
especially
very cool. They've essentially given us like almost all of Nezarac's gear. I think the only thing we would be missing right now would probably be arms and like boots, which I'm sure maybe next season we'll get those items. So yeah, big spoils. And there was something that I was reading earlier. I completely forgot my train of thought, and I should have written notes before.
So we were talking Nezarec. We were talking about the reliquaries and him being entombed in the ship, and also now in the different reliquaries that are going around, or that we're going around and picking up.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. Yeah. So on the back of that, the last 2 points, which I think people will find real interesting, is the only other mention we've had of Nezarec in any relation to a tomb is the Drifter. And we know for a fact that Drifter is talked about really early on in his lore, visiting the 4th tomb of Nezarec. We don't know where that tomb is located or what it is. What we do know is that the Drifter left the Sol system to go to the outer edges of, well, he left the Sol system and like left our solar system in general, right? And there were only a few other places for us to go. So there's the Jovian system, which is where the 9 are. Hint, hint, wink, wink. And then there's the Saturn's system, which is the Saturnian system, but I don't think we're going to see that system until like after the final shape.
Yeah.
But if we're going to the Jovian system, the reason why this is a big deal is because Neptune is in the Jovian system, and the Jovian system is the system that the 9 are supposed to be in control of. So it would be interesting to see how Bungie sets this up, and it could. My theory is that wherever that tomb is related to Neptune, and that may set up whoever the next big bad is going to be, which could possibly be Nezarec, or he's just involved in the process of what the final shape is. And
there's an interesting lore card concerning all that. I believe it was I was trying to catch up on like Nezarec and like and Ishtar Collective this week as well. And there's an interesting card that says something along the lines of like being more than the sum of your parts is essentially what it comes down to, and like reaching like a step where you're kind of like wind.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Does that ring a bell?
I'm not sure if I've read it. Do you have the name of it?
I don't have the name of it. Of course I don't have the name of it. Yeah, I can't find it right now. But like I remember reading something along those lines where it was like becoming more than the sum of your parts.
Yeah.
Which was the like, especially when we're talking about shapes, when we're talking about like Callus becoming a disciple of the witness, when we're talking about all these different things like that kind of like that idea takes more shape, I guess, is, pardon the pun, but but it takes more of a thought on the forefront.
Yeah, you're not wrong. There is a lore entry. Trying to remember it's called. Oh, yeah, it's Gardener. It's the Gardener and the Winnower lore entry. Okay, and there's a specific line in that lore entry. And I'm going to see if I can grab it real quickly.
Okay.
And it's in the Book of Unveiling. Yep, here we go. And the line goes, if I can find it, try and find. Yeah, so the Book of Unveiling, it's called The Final Shape, and there's one line in it that says, "We had our assigned dominions and always would." Really interesting line, because it suggests that both the light and the dark were given the roles that they currently occupy. And if we are, so Destiny lore is always ambiguous, but if we were to take that literally, we would assume that somebody's put them both, like they both have a job that's been given to them by somebody who is of a higher authority. So the question is who that higher authority is. And so the interesting part about the Book of Unveiling is it suggests that there was a universe before the universe that Destiny currently exists in, right? Which would be considered like the, I guess, the prime or the original universe. And so it's interesting that we are slowly walking closer and closer towards this final conclusion of whatever this shape is. And it's interesting because in the Lightfall trailer, the witness also says, me paraphrasing again, let them come to Neptune so that they can discover, so that they can see our final shape, right? And then once they've seen that, only then can we be free. So it's very interesting because it makes me feel like the witness isn't really... The witness is a circumstantial bad guy who is using us to break free from this reality that they have somehow trapped themselves in.
Okay.
Right? Because the way I like to think of it, like Destiny is a chessboard, right? And I'm thinking about all the different pieces you have in the chessboard: the kings, the queens, the rooks, the knights. So I try to look at the the witness. I don't know if the witness is like a king or queen per se. I feel like maybe they're a bishop, and then whoever the final shape actually is either an actual being or just an analogy for like
what's to come,
right?
Like what
of a universe that isn't bound by light and dark, essentially, in the way that we know it. But yeah, getting super deep lore feels. Most people probably switched off like 10 minutes ago.
It's all good. It's all good. I'll edit it up so it happens in the first 5 minutes. We're good.
Okay.
But yeah, it's interesting seeing like seeing Nezarec kind of become like a featured player in this. Especially, like, I'm looking at the lore piece for his helm right now, and it says he is that which is an end, and he shall rise again. A passage from Of Hated Nezarec, a pre-Golden Age text. So, we're gathering his pieces on the helm, which the past seasons have started to maybe think that maybe we shouldn't be doing things on the helm anymore.
Right.
You know, like first it was the psychic waterboarding in the back of the thing. Then it was the crown being on the helm, and now we're just compiling a bad guy.
Right.
Like in the middle of the bridge. This kind of feels like we're gathering his body parts together, kind of like the Infinity Stones a little bit, without knowing exactly what we're doing.
Yes. That's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah. And so we could be lining ourselves, look, speculation again, but we could be lining ourselves up to like ushering in like another era of Nezarec, is what it kind of feels like. But I think some of the big movements of have been with notwithstanding like the whole reliquary storyline with us and Drifter, and now Eris is kind of in on that side. We also have the Elixni side of the conversation with Mithrax, Ido. We have the Spider involved, and Aramis, a newly thawed Aramis, where we're going around basically playing Pirates of the Caribbean, knocking out ships, grabbing relics. Like, I believe the boss this week was called the Bully. We're just taking down bullies one by one, grabbing these darkness infused artifacts.
Yeah.
And we learn a lot about Mithrax's backstory when it comes to his swashbuckling days.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's an interesting touch point, because it was this time last year that we met Mithrax really in earnest when he was talking about the House of Light. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It was during... Well, we'd met Mithrax one time on Titan, when we still had Titan several years back.
When we saved him from the Hive. He was basically a character that was in a cage by the Hive, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And once we set him free, you had the option of killing him or
the Hive Knight. Yeah.
Yeah, keeping him alive. And so we met him once before then. We met him in earnest, like met him as a character last year during the season of the Splicer, which was kind of like a weird redemption arc for Saint 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we had him all... He was basically the boogeyman for the Elixni. And now we're seeing kind of like a parallel and a foil in Mithrax, where he was kind of the scourge of the galaxy, where he's turned over that new leaf in being the Kell for the House of Light. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really powerful story because it is one of forgiveness and redemption, right? And this is something that we've seen as far back as Crow, right? As Aldrin Sov being this, he was a tyrant from the first moment we met him in D1, right? He just he was obsessed with his sister,
right?
And he
very Game of Thrones.
Yeah, very like big time. And then the Traveler brought him back, and then we had this whole he had this whole internal struggle with now knowing better and also having seen all his past mistakes thanks to Savathun, R.I.P. For now. And then we saw it with Saint. And we always thought Saint was a good guy until we saw Saint in the eyes of the Elixir. And so it's really interesting that the person who was even telling the story about the Saint was Mithrax. And then we've had a story this season about Mithrax essentially doing the same thing to his own people, but maybe a little bit worse on some levels because Saint was at least he wasn't literally, not that made it any better, but he learned from his mistakes and turned over a new leaf after a lot of convincing. And then we assume Mithrax did the same because we haven't heard about it, but now he's Caliph House Light, but he has this history that he refused to tell anybody about. And so now we're dealing with the aftermath with him and Ido. And of course it works out well for Aramis because it's like if she can sow enough to stop them from trying to get the relics, then that's a great game plan for her. Obviously it's not going to happen because Ido wants to put her personal feelings behind her and still be effective. However, anytime darkness relics come into the picture, they always have an effect on everybody, not just the people who are the bad guys, if that makes sense.
Right.
And this is something that happens in Destiny quite often. People get influenced by the darkness, and it tends to bring out the worst in who they are. I think there was a moment during Season of the Splicer in the city where Lakshmi was a great example.
Yeah.
Savathun or Savasiris was I just made that up as well.
There you go.
It's not a real thing.
It's a thing for me now. So everybody listening to this is now going to know it. So Savasiris. Yeah. Continue. Sorry.
She only had to push or give Lakshmi a nudge, and that was it. The worst of Lakshmi's character was brought out in the name of trying to protect people.
Populism.
Right. And so we've seen this happen time and time again. Excuse me. And so now here we are in Season of Plunder, Season 18, and we've collected these relics, and we've just heard the story about how these relics affect people's personalities. And I feel like the Ido we're seeing, it's not just a case of the fact that she's upset. She's upset and she's mad. She's in control of it right now. But something like the way she spoke, yes, like in the weekly mission, made me feel as though she's not just getting these relics back to stop Aramis from getting hold of them, but she's collecting these relics with the researcher's curiosity at the same time, and maybe wants to see what happens if she puts them back together in a way of defying her dad, which is Mithrax. But then ultimately it's going to be a mistake. In some way it's going to be a mistake for somebody. The question is who. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out next week. And based on how many relics we have now, I would assume we have possibly 3 left or 4 left, because the size of the relics has started to sort of increase. We have these huge containers that are like 2 relics in one almost.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I was in game last night looking at them, like zooming in, lowering my FOV so I could see and just count the space and calculate each.
Oh, that's definitely his femur.
Yeah.
So
is that a foot? That looks like a foot.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see like where all this goes, especially more and more mentions of Nezarec can't be a great thing. I'm looking at on the helm right now, and yeah, it looks like we have probably room for like 3 more canisters. So that like we're probably 3 weeks out, but like the I want to see how Aramis deals with this, because like part of this is we're learning a lot about Mithrax. Yes, we're learning a lot about Ido. We're learning a lot about Nezarec, probably more than we have in recent memory. But Aramis, we're learning about her. Like she had a family. You know,
that's right.
She's got kids, and she also has like. She feels like a character that's kind of caught between the light and the darkness, where the light has already kind of like has already left her people. It's already like it's already been it's already left. It's already left its mark, right? And in her kind of penchant for revenge, reached out to the darkness, which was the opposite of the light, and ended up frozen on like a on a platform for a little over a year. So she's finding that like all of these alternatives have turned to kind of bite her in the ass, right? So now what do we see, like what do you think we'll see her be doing over the next few weeks even?
Well, she seems to be desperate, but still a lot more calculated than she usually is. And the witness is offering her, obviously, all sorts of benefits, as he did with all the other disciples. But she seems to want to go the path that Nezarec went. That's the vibe that I get, because she's like, I'm not pledging anything to the witness. Like, I just want power. So that I can get revenge. Right. So that I can get revenge on the Traveler. Because she like, this is all because she's mad at the Traveler. Because the Traveler abandoned the Elixir to the Whirlwind when the Hive showed up. So, but obviously now there's only 3 relics left. I don't know what she's thinking. So it will be interesting. Is 3 relics still worth chasing after the Guardians have taken more or less all of them?
I guess it depends on what's in the relics.
Must be.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
so far we can... I mean, they've told us what's in the relics. We know...
Right.
We know it's pieces of Nezarec. We just don't know what happens.
Maybe it's a skull.
Right.
And like, yeah, you know what? So that mention actually harkens back to something that we saw in the cutscene. I'm just now thinking of like the thing that you said about Ido. So he was going around, basically Mithrax was going around collecting these with these relics already. Collecting them.
Yeah, so they all if I'm not mistaken, was it Mithrax's mother that was going around? I'm like looking for the video because I recorded it last night.
I think, yeah, I think she was the one that found the tomb. But I thought that it was him who was going around collecting them. it almost feels like a Lord of the Ringsy kind of thing, where everybody was kind of given a little bit of Nezarec, and the more that he compiled together, the more maybe violent.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's right. So they found the pyramid on the moon when they first got to the solar system, which is really interesting because how did they know? They knew that pyramid had been there, and we only just found it in Shadowkeep.
Which would explain why they have a presence on the moon.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they, of course, because they'd never seen the pyramids before. They'd only seen the hive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how their collapse, well, we assume. Like, we actually don't have a full recount of what we just know that Oryx destroyed he killed their leader during the whirlwind, but we don't know if there were any pyramid ships because we also don't know because we never see during Season of the Risen, we only learned of Savathun's relationship with the Witness, but we never got to hear about obviously Ziva Arath, who, by the way, we still haven't met yet. So I'm going to assume that one of these seasons will include her, or we're going to see her in Lightfall. I mean, she has to show up
somewhere
for the last fight at some point.
Yeah, because
she's still loyal to the Witness.
Yeah,
but now we have Callus, so it's interesting how this is going. But anyway, back to Season of Plunder. Yeah, so they found Nezarec's tomb. And the strangest part is that because it jumps to say that they harvested the dark power of Nezarec, right? And this was this wasn't Mithrax who did this. This was oh wait, no, sorry. Yeah, it was Mithrax because he's holding baby Ido. Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, what's interesting is that they knew that this tomb held power, and they knew that Nezarec's body held power, which would make me believe that they knew who Nezarec was already.
Okay.
At least that's the way it comes across to me, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, the way that it seemed like something was calling out to them. Like they'd kind of like they'd in-fought each other. This is according to like one of the lore tabs too, where it's like they were just drifting. They had in-fought each other, hence like the whole piracy thing, and they had essentially been through all this infighting. There was also like the idea of have you ever seen The Expanse?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I slight misquote. So it was when Mithrax was a hatchling.
Yes,
his
mother discovered it.
Yeah, and they harvested Nezarec, and then Mithrax inherited it from her, like the piece that she took.
Yeah, and then started to collect them on his own and becoming more and more ruthless. It seems, and a monster to his own people.
Right.
But it seems like they were kind of like they were all just kind of drifting, kind of like the Belters in The Expanse, right? Like they're enclosed in their own spaces. They're forming their own societies. They have their own ways of doing things now.
Yeah.
And then something calls out and reaches out to them after they've already like lost a power.
That's right.
So that's what this seems like. That's what it seems like to me. It seems like we're going to see like a lot more. It wouldn't surprise me if Nezarec showed back up and was like, "What's up, boss?" And like we ended up fighting him, and then stealing his boots or something, right?
Right, or something. Yeah, I think you're right. There's definitely a lot of merit to that because, it just. I think the only thing we don't know is how big a player Nezarec is, but the lore seems to make out like he's one of the only people. He's one of the only things that has been able to perfect the use of both light and dark together.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from obviously us, and the whole point of him being entombed, according to him, is that he was waiting for or at least it suggests that he's waiting for a time where what the Drifter calls the dogma of the light and dark has ended, and he can be himself. He doesn't have to adhere to any any final shape nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
We will see. I think we're away. We're a bit of away, but not too long away until we see what's going to happen. I mean, at least we have 3 weeks left. I don't know how many left in the season.
I believe 3 weeks left in the story, and I believe it's 12 weeks for a season.
Ooh, that'll be interesting. I'm trying to find. Normally, it tells you in the Destiny app how many days are left in the season collectively, and
I can tell you that right now. I brought up the game so I could be a little bit more useful in this regard. We have 75 days left as of this recording.
Oh, so we've got so probably have like a month of like nothing essentially.
Yeah.
But this season will wrap up in 3 weeks with a major cliffhanger, obviously.
Yeah, we'll probably have the 3 weeks of a major cliffhanger, and then like somewhere in the last couple of weeks, like, hey, Guardian, go to this place. There's something crazy happening.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So I have this question from Aki and Fam.
Okay.
What do you think Spider's endgame is in all of this? Yeah, we didn't even discuss Spider at all.
Oh yeah.
Do you think it's just to grind Mithrex's gears?
It's very strategic because Spider is the bootlegger of the Destiny universe.
That's a strong statement, man.
I mean, he's
fair.
He's more of a haggler than the Drifter is, which is why the Drifter and Spider seem to get along, at least in the last like couple of seasons. Their relationship has become more what's the word? Advantageous toward each other. And they've ironically both been keeping tabs on each other because they're both into shady business. Although
they're both kind of chaotic neutral.
Yeah, chaotic neutral. Although I will say that the Drifter has been less dark and brooding in this season than the previous. We've had more of a comical, even slightly more concerned Drifter than we usually get. So it's very interesting to see this item. I think he's had a huge impact from Eris. Eris has maybe softened his edges, as it were. As their relationship builds, which I love. I love the interactions between the two of them. It's been a long time in the making. I think the rest of the community loves it. But yeah, Spider is always looking at what angle he can work, and so it works well that he's in the last seat because he can, he can profit, and being on the team hunting the relics is also advantageous because it's like he has new collector's items. Even though I will say, hearing Mithrax speak down to the Spider, that was intimidating.
Oh yeah,
from last week. I was like, whoa, okay, this is the dark side of Mithrax. And to see see another Elixir who's technically a Kel in his own right be I guess bullied.
Kind of like deferential.
Yeah, and completely back away because he was afraid, but now it makes sense because we know Mithrax history. But yeah, I think the spider will also have a slightly more softened edge, but I think that'll change as the season moves forward. I'm not sure what the conclusion of the Elixir will be on the whole. But it's interesting to see because this will be the second season where we've had a really big focus on the Elixir history. And it's clever because I think the narrative team they've picked core chunks of their history and then like scattered them throughout seasons. So we're still getting these lore entries in lore books. We're still getting flavor texts on armor and weapons. And then we're getting these seasons with like chunky pieces of information that they've just happened to withhold from us. Again. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the spider. I'm glad that they kept him in. I'd like to see him become a vendor again, personally. And they've kind of done that with this, right? They've kind of sort of teased at that with this whole roulette of random items.
Yeah.
And ironically, some of them are like grey starter armor that I'm not even sure we still get anymore.
No, we don't. As somebody who plays quite often, we do not. Okay, this question comes from Gorath Hyun, and it looks toward the future, toward Lightfall. With nanites confirmed as more advanced than Siva, do you think they will ever bring Siva back, or do you think it'll have anything to do with Exo Rasputin if they go there?
It's there's potential for both. I did a video recently where I touched on that, and basically there's two things. One, Neomuna is built with Golden Age tech. Golden Age tech was built by Clovis Bray, so there's a very strong advantage that one, Rasputin knew about Neomuna from the moment that Exodus colony ship touched down. And may have even been part of the development process. It may even be possible that there is a war mind on Neomuna.
Oh.
Because they have the technology to support it. And it makes me wonder if Rasputin has kind of been faking this whole I'm crippled, stuck in an engram thing.
Yeah.
So I would imagine we'll see some heavy focus on the Bray family somewhere in that story
during that time. Well, it almost
for Rasputin, yeah.
Yeah, up until that point, like it feels like it definitely feels like a branch, like putting this in terms of like streaming and whatever. It feels like, oh, they're the Streamlabs OBS of humanity is essentially. They just kind of like branched off from us, which like seems interesting. I would like to see Siva come back.
Yes,
for weapon reasons, but also lore reasons. Like it was kind of like this awesomely terrifying thing that used in the wrong, like an allegory for like the tools that man makes, of course,
right?
But like it is seeing an evolution of that make something as beautiful as the city of, or as beautiful as a city of Neomuna, based on what we've seen so far. Seems like we could still do a lot with it, even in its unharnessed form.
Well, it's very interesting because lore-wise, every Exodus colony ship was outfitted with a Siva containment chamber, is what they call it. And so if a colony ship makes it to a planet, it's pretty easy. I would assume that Neomuna was able to pop up in the way that it did because they had Siva to create that entire city, because it's so immaculately put together. And then obviously over time potentially refine that technology.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is, so in a lot of the Golden Age aspects of what was created, Rasputin was at the forefront of most of that like research and development.
Mm-hmm.
It was Rasputin who developed the Exodus program, which is mankind exploring and living on other planets. And so when that first sky shock alert comes through, that's Rasputin detecting it, right? And so he springs into action and gets everybody mobilized. You guys need to get off this planet because it's over, right? This darkness paracausal level threat is basically gonna extinct us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be very interesting to find out about all the things that have been kept secret by Rasputin.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially definitely by Elsie Bray, because we've had the lore entry from Quicksilver Storm auto rifle that literally tells us Elsie Bray's in some sort of station orbiting. We assume it's orbiting Neptune, but anyway, there is a puka, which is the fish thing she has as a companion, and a ghost. We don't know if it's hers, but we know the ghost was just there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be very interesting. So I see the potential of maybe a lot of conversation about Siva. Whether we'll end up using it, I don't know. But we've had a lot of Siva related items and Rasputin related items in the Eververse store for the last, I want to say 4 seasons. And usually I love Bungie because they always drop narrative gameplay hints for story, and it's usually through skins and items and stuff like that. And we've had like a lot of, I think we just recently got, is it a Warlock Siva related exotic arm we just got as well recently in the store?
I think so.
I
I
could be
think
wrong,
so.
but yeah, something like that. So it's interesting that they continue to keep adding Siva related cosmetics, because what reason would you have to add them when it's not focus?
Right.
The final Siva related point is that the Nessus ship Exodus Black is on Nessus. That ship also was outfitted with a Siva chamber. So at any point, that Siva chamber can come back into focus. Now, there's a voice line from Failsafe where if you go to Nessus and you go to Exodus Black crash site and you go to Failsafe, if you hang around for long enough, you'll hear her say a voice line about searching for the Siva containment chamber. I think it's like 152 or 125 or something like that. But she can't locate it. So it's going to be interesting to see if that comes back in, or they're just going to retcon that, because I know sometimes Bungie will retcon things because it's irrelevant to where they're headed. But now that Siva's back in the picture, it makes sense. Or potentially back in the picture. It would make sense to connect the two. So exciting stuff. Really great question. Could go for days on that.
Well, heck yeah, man! Thanks so much for like helping me parse through a lot of this.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Once again, where can people? Absolutely, anytime. Where can people find you on the internet, good sir?
You can find me at twitter.com/Psalmlab. Same for YouTube, youtube.com/Psalmlab. And those are the two best places to find me. talking about Destiny lore, neurodiversity, accessibility in games, and encouraging people with the message of hope.
And some of the best YouTube thumbnails I've ever seen.
Oh, you're too kind. I try.
It's solid work. Solid work. Huge fan of it.
Thank you so much for listening, folks. My name's Danfinity. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and the TikTok, where the eyes are L's. You can catch me 3 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/Danfinity, helping Guardians through Pinnacle and Endgame PvE activities. If you'd like to support the show, remember to rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. This show is also listener supported, so if you'd like to give a few bucks a month to keep the lights on, head on over to coffee.com/Danfinity. All links are in the notes for the episode. May your RNG always be adept, and I hope you find what you're grinding for.